Good morning, dear colleagues. Good morning, all our members of this webinar. We are again online with our traditional webinar of United for Ukraine Network. And today we shall have really very important topic, which is related not to what is happening in the military front or not about future NATO membership of Ukraine, what we discussed yesterday. Today we shall talk about reconstruction of Ukraine after the war. And of course, our webinar is related with the recent London conference, where quite many of us perhaps participated. And today we have really good occasion to look more deeply into where things are now and what still we need to achieve. Both sides, Ukraine and European Union, Commission, and other institutions, member states. So that's why it's my pleasure really today to have prominent speakers. We shall start with Oleksandra AZARKHINA. She is Deputy Minister of Infrastructure of Ukraine. And then we shall have Gabriel Blanc, who is team leader of Reconstruction of Ukraine from European Commission, and Hugo Mingarelli, now as an expert, but of course very well known on both sides, both Ukraine and European Union, since he was EU ambassador to Ukraine till recent times. And what is maybe in this case, it's very important that also he was some time ago director of the European Agency for the Reconstruction of the Balkans, and now he's a lecturer in international relations. So that is our speakers. And as always, well, we shall ask maybe Oleksandra AZARKHINA to make the major presentation, major statement, up to 15 minutes. Other speakers perhaps up to 7-8 minutes. And I hope that we shall have a lively discussion. The audience should put, as always, their questions on chat, and then we shall try to answer all of them. So, Mrs. Oleksandra, the floor is yours, please. Oleksandra.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Andrius. Thank you very much to all members of the team. And it's a great pleasure and the honor to share some thoughts and some actually outcomes of the London conference. So first of all, our team find this conference very successful. It's way more focused, it's way more realistic than anything we had after the Lugano, and probably it's the right timing for that. I'm quite happy to say that the donors community, the other stakeholders, already not asking many questions why we're talking about the restoration. It's almost commonplace to share the opinion that the restoration is one of the ways to achieve the victory. It's one part of the overall Ukrainian resistance, and that's our obligations, Ukrainian states, to provide the access to the citizens to normal life conditions, to the basic needs which will need to be fulfilled to make the economic growth, to make possibility to further fight. Very simple formula we will keep repeating on our meetings. We're like, Ukraine needs to restore itself to relaunch economics. That's first of all. The Ukrainian economic development, that's taxes. We're paying the salaries to our soldiers from our taxes. We're very grateful to all partners for the weapons provision, for the defense assistance. But again, the human power, the soldiers themselves need to be well paid as well. And we do think that the Russians, they do understand that connection between the economic development and the military resistance. So that's why they're also aiming in for the economic opportunities of Ukraine. And being the minister which is responsible for the restoration as a process, we do share the idea that the restoration need to be the transformation, the modernization, and it's actually need to transform not only the infrastructure itself, but the relationship between the state, the community, the citizens, and at the same time to transform those things to make them more inclusive, to include citizens as the shareholders of the restoration. And again, we're talking about the economic recovery, because while planning everything, we were quite clear with understanding that the restoration without understanding about the working places, the business opportunities, isn't properly realistic. So that's just the overall outcome. I think everyone are quite focused, quite inspired by the conference. Of course, like from our point of view, the conference, it wasn't like, fundraising platform to gather the promises and then to say, okay, Ukraine covered this part of the needs. It felt more like an exam after the end of the year, actually in the summer, when we were preparing the works, our homework, to make sure that we can answer the main questions from the partners. So, and the main questions we were trying to answer were the following. First of all, do Ukraine understand what it needs in the first row? What's Ukraine's priorities? The second question, do Ukraine is able to build the architecture, to prevent the corruption, to manage this process, to make it just, to make it reliable, and create the conditions for the open market and involvement of different stakeholders and investors? Those were two main questions. The third part of the questions were related mostly on the business opportunities, because answering on the first two questions, it's obvious that the amount of Ukraine needs, it's a bit more than anyone have at the moment. Of course, it's a common thing to share the idea that it's Russia who need to pay for Ukrainian restoration, but before it's happening, we're relying a lot on the partners. But in the same time, it's obvious that there are not enough just donor funds. That's why we need to make sure that the business money, the private investments will happen. And that's why everyone were asking the questions about the business conditions. So those were the three sectors of the questions we were trying to answer. So, and what we made and what we actually presented. First of all, that's the thing we developed together with the World Bank, but also with other stakeholders, that's prioritization methodology. As you probably remember, Ukraine was developing the plan for the restoration last year, and it's more like about the vision. This year, it also was a focus on the economic, like a vision of Ukrainian development. Our approach in the team, which is quite, grounded and object-oriented, was more practical and was oriented not from the general picture to the concrete things, but vice versa, from the object to overall picture. So we developed the methodology to analyze the projects through the lenses of the possibility to fulfill the people's need on the ground, which means electricity, water supply, heating supply, transportation, healthcare, education, and everything else growing above. So that's where, the approach, which we call like a formula-based approach, we already testing it on the basis of Ukrainian Fund for the Liquidation of the Consequences of the Russian Aggression. This fund now consists of three major sources of financing. That's as arrested Russian assets, then it's the money which Ukraine receives as a revenue to the National Bank of Ukraine, and also like a sanctioned asset also going to be fulfilled for this fund. So we were trying to build a system in which we at least have data-driven solutions, in which we are analyzing each object. But each object is analyzed, and I'm talking now for the regional and local authorities projects to provide the critical infrastructure recovery. That also needs to be analyzed not only through the formula, but in cohesion with the programs and plans of the complex development and recovery of the community. How it looks like practically. Practically, we do have, as any of European countries, the tools for the regional policy. We do have the state regional development strategy, which also goes down to the regions and then go down to the local level. Last year, it was an initiative from the government and the parliament to launch a new entity. The new entities, both from the point of view of the regional policy and from the point of view of the special planning. So that's how we created a new approach, which calls the plans for recovery, which need to be developed by the communities. and it's vice versa. It goes like a community planning the recovery, then it goes to the regional level, then it goes to the national level. In the same time, we have the approach for the spatial planning, and we are focusing on the complex programs for the development. And that's actually the most clever document to properly plan the community's restoration through the analysis of the territories, through the analysis of the contamination of the socioeconomic information, through understanding of the existing working places, etc. So that's the deepest analysis. Last year, it was a hope that they were gonna finish faster. This year, we still would like to finish this war as soon as possible, but at the same time, we're learning how to live, how to build while fighting. That's why we are combining this, formula-based object-by-object approach and this programming approach when the communities, first of all, developing their own vision of the development. So that's probably a bit like a nerdy and like a complex sound approach for the prioritization, but it also already helping us at the government to create the vision for the project which need to be financed in the first row, and the second row, and so on. We already agreed the first tranche of the payments for the communities and the regional authorities to restore the critical infrastructure. The majority of the projects goes to the locals and the regions. Less projects, like a 20%, goes to the agency for the restoration. And the message we are trying to send to everyone, that the agency for the restoration plays the role as the key leader for the flagship national projects, as an actor which is responsible for the core of the restoration for the national level. It only inserts in the process for the communities where the communities are actually absent as a local government because of the occupation, where they are not able to organize this process. And my task in the ministry is actually to make sure that the more communities are capable to do that by themselves and less of them are asking agency to help them. So this, our approach, it's actually the first frame prepared by Ukrainian government, while we're not just talking, but we're also proving our decisions practically, legally, financially. So the principle that the community is playing their core role in the restoration is here, because that's the community who initiate the projects. That's the community strategy, which is on the core of the prioritization. And that's the communities who get the finances, and they actually control the process of the restoration. In the same time, we do understand that there are a lot of the risks, the same risk on the central, regional, or local level. I'm talking about the managerial risk, I'm talking about the corruption risk, and that's why we're working as well together with the partners. First of all, we are working with the Basel Institute in Governance, and we are focusing on the idea how to make this structure of fund for the liquidation, the consequences of the Russian aggression, even better. It's already not bad because it's database, because it's inserted in the digital system we call DREAM, which allows us to build a transparent approach for the restoration. But at the same time, we need to make this procedure even better, especially if we're trying to think about the next year. And at the same time, we're trying to work now with, also probably Gabriel will mention that we started to consult with the European Commission to make sure that the things we're doing now, they are in line with the requirements of the European Commission, and they will engage also not only the approach like a object by object, but again, bigger picture to understand where we're going in general. So, but the approach for the prioritization for the regional and local authorities, it's just only step number one in our prioritization approach. Step number two, it's actually regarding the sectorial methodologies for the prioritization. So what does it mean? At that moment, the Fund for the Liquidation, the Consequences of the Russian Aggression, it also can finance the projects proposed by the ministers, sectoral ministers responsible for development of different sectors. They too need to develop their own plans for the recovery, but the sectoral one. And their methodology to prioritization is also formula-based, but in the same way as it works for the regional local project, it needs to be aligned with the program document. So we're really trying to build a system where we can analyze the object, which is necessary to analyze through the lenses of the efficiency, of the amount of the people we can help, of the overall economic reasonability of implementing this project, and at the same time to have the vision, to have the ability to plan it on a map and also on a timeline. And then we are building the methodology to check those projects intersectoral. So when, for example, we do understand that the energy sector, agrarian sector, environmental protection sector, they have their own strategic plans, but at the same time, the resources are limited. That's why we need the methodology to compare those objects between themselves and to make sure that we are building the proper decision-making process here as well. Additionally, we haven't started just only, drafts of the TRRs, but we're building the methodology to prioritize the complex restoration project, settlement by settlement project. That's a very important thing. And actually, that's not something, many of the countries faced only after the Second World War. The idea how to take the decision, which settlement, which city or village need to be rebuilt, reconstruct after the war, and which we just live in it, just, making sure that there are no waste and it's cleaned and becoming, filled. That's quite a hard decision. It, of course, will have a lot of the political influence because it's a high political decision, but at the same time, it needs to be grounded on the data. If there are businesses, if there are willingness of people to come back, and what about the security? That's why this focus on the not object by object prioritization, but like a complex prioritization will be a bit after. That's mostly after the victory, but still we need to build the approach here. As well, we are trying to prioritize properly the PPP projects. That was one of the focuses for the London conference, because we do understand again that we need to engage the private businesses, and we're very grateful to the partners, especially to the IFC, which help us and consult us with the ideas how to involve the money into the state and communal municipal assets. I'm quite proud to say that even now we are working together with IFC on the launch of the PPP of the concession in Chornomorsk. It's one of the biggest seaports on the Odessa region, one of the free operational seaports under the grain initiative. And we plan to launch the tender for this concession project before the end of this year. It's container terminal, and we can say that there are already 5 big market players that are interested in that. Even more, in this industry for the logistics, this year and the beginning of the year, Ukraine privatized one of the seaports on the Danube, Ust-Dunaysk. It was only $200 million for the seaport. It's not like a big money, but it was bought by a Ukrainian farmer, which actually sells its grain for the all means. And from our point of view, it's again a good sign that our theoretic idea that the money from the private businesses can come in for the country, and our job is to make the system for that. It's reasonable, it's real. We already see those examples. So I was trying to cover this idea how we are prioritizing things, and I was mentioning those 5 prioritization methodologies, starting with the local and regional projects, then going to the sectoral ministries, then going to the understanding how we analyze it through cross-sectorals, how we prioritize settlement by settlement, reconstruction and PPP projects, because it also need to be prioritized because it's still the loans, it's still the state guarantees, and we also very limited here under the IMF frame and other rules as well. Frankly speaking, this approach sometimes hard to explain, but at that moment we see it as a workable because it's based on the data, and the data already gathering in our system for the proper digital accountable management of the restoration, this system called DREAM. I hope many of you had opportunity to see some publications about this system. We're quite proud about it because that's like somehow the Prozoro for the restoration. It's quite a huge and ambitious system, but we already have the MVP, the basic environment where we're already using. So the system focusing on the 3 key tasks. First of all, it's about accountability, transparency, because the whole process for the infrastructure project, starting from the, again, prioritization, because the things I mentioned, they're embedded in the digital system. Then coming back to the where we procure things, that of course related to the Prozoro, then the way the project itself is implemented through the analysis of the money usage, through the analysis of the progress of work, the data from the independent technical supervision will be downloaded in the system automatically. So that's really about accountability, but also about just ability to manage those objects. We also do think that this tool will be very useful for the donors, because for the donors, and especially in the frame of the donor coordination platform, I'll come back to it later, it's important to have the tool where you can see which donor is working where, which zones on the map are already supported by some donors and which are just empty for now. And that's also about the management, because even now, let's say our ministry has the portfolio of the 45 projects with the IFIs. And in these 45 projects, we do have 100 included, and each of them requires the procedure, the bureaucracy, the special way to analyze them. It's quite hard to manage, not only from our side, but also from the partner side. And we do understand that we all need to find this, digital solution, because Ukrainian restoration, Ukrainian prioritization, it's not something like built on the, empty sheet, like a tabula rasa, when you just put the rules and you can, create the plan and then fill it with ideas and with the money. No, it's everything happening right now. The majority of the projects we have now and the things we implemented last year, that's actually loans which were just restructured, and where we are grateful, first of all, for the European Investment Bank, because we had a project to restore the Kyiv-Odessa highway, but we managed together with the European Commission this money to repair the bridges. And actually, even the last year, we reopened 40 bridges. And this year, we're hoping to do the same for 100 bridges. From 326 destroyed bridges, that's quite a sum. And for sure, for us, it's very reasonable, because it's about the economic, the export logistic, and the accessibility of the regions and the ability of Ukrainian economic to grow as well. So those things are very connected, and that's why it's like a pragmatic idea for us to have this digital tool. At the same time, this digital tool will be very important for the communities, because the communities can build their own investment portfolio in this system. And that will be their direct dialogue with any of the stakeholders, any of the investments, either it's like a European Investment Bank, World Bank, or the private investor. So the whole data about the project needs is already in the system. Now, our challenge is to make this data more qualitative, because now what we did, we had the RDNA, the overall analytics of the needs. We gather the data and needs from the communities. We look it through the methodology for the prioritization, but the methodology for the prioritization for locals is just a recommendation. And at the same time, we would like communities to be competitive, to be, fighting for this money as well. And we do understand the communities which will be better prepared for the project preparation point of view, they receive money faster. And that's bring us to the next question, and the thing we were putting and underlying in London, that's the capacity building. Because when we're saying that we would like to have communities as the leaders of the restoration, that means we need to provide the capabilities to them. And of course, it's about the people, brains, resources. And here we go to the technical assistance projects, because the technical assistance projects, such as reform support teams, which existed on the level on the central body, they work quite well. I came from this structure. My boss, Deputy Prime Minister Oleksandra, he also worked for this type of them structures reformers. Like when you're independent, you're receiving your good salary paid by like a mostly EU, and you can build a country being at the same time well supported. Now there is necessity to support the local authorities to make sure that they will be able to prepare the project, to build the compliance policies, to think ahead, plan properly, and actually to implement the restoration in form of the transformation of whole system. We already have a success with the projects supported by Canadian government, the project called CLEAR, Community-Led Inclusive Restoration. So we put all our ideas in the naming, and we're now waiting for the confirmation for other bigger partners to make sure that the existing even technical assistance projects will be a bit retransformed to make sure that there are actual people working on the place. I'll give you one example. the Ukrainian government, together with the parliament, launched a system called e-recovery. So that's the system through which you can create the citizens applying about the damages of their property through their phone. The DIA application, quite famous Ukrainian application, where you have your documents, all your registers, etc. You're saying, I have a problem, windows out, roof out because of the Russian rocket. Then it's local authorities which goes to the people, to the persona, and physically checking either the destruction really happened. It's very simple, digitalized checklist, but it needs to be filled by someone. And that's all obviously only local authorities. Local authorities confirming that the destruction happened. And then it's the state who pays directly money to the people who left the claim and who owns the property. So it's very transparent system, minimum corruption risk, but it's quite heavy to implement from the point of view of the local authorities. So we now see already that some local authorities are a bit better and faster with organizing those commissions and like organizing the system when we can pay. And we can say that if in the system, we already have 22,000 applications for the people who are asking for the support for the minor repairs. And these minor repairs, they're actually under the under 200,000 hryvnias, which actually more like a $4,000. And now there are 500 commissions which were created. And we already understand that the local authorities provided the confirmation for 17 million hryvnias and already paid 7 million. So those numbers are quite good. But in the same time, we just spoke to the Kharkiv mayor and we are discussing how to strengthen his ability to overview all those applications, how to give him hands and brains to work faster, because we can build very nice, digital tool, but when it goes to the proper work, it's just about the proper work. So those are the challenges our community is facing, and that's why we're insisting in asking the donors to just help about thinking how to support the human resource, because we're losing obviously our best people in the front line and a lot of our people on the abroad, and that's something which need to be strengthened, obviously. So, and that's the idea which we were pushing, and I do think that the donors heard us, and we do hope that we'll have the support as well, because it's even more structurally goes to the European integration process. We want our regions and local authorities be better prepared for the Euro integration. That's why we launched the necessity to review the state regional development strategy. So we really would like to synchronize it with the European Union approaches right now. And we build in the G-information system for regional development already, which allows to monitor the development of the regions and based on the monitor to provide the payments from the state regional development fund. So those things might be, obvious from the European point of view. That's exactly how it should work, but it's something we're shuffling right now. And I do think that we're doing right when we're making sure that the restoration is becoming one with the regional policies. And that's why we need to do our job as well to make sure that we have proper planning from the state point of view to provide enough resources and data to the locals when they're building their recovery project. And just to probably a few slides, I would like to show which were presented by my boss in London, just to highlight a few things which was important to share. So the first of all, that's about our job we were doing since the full-scale invasion. For the ministry, which were obviously civilian one, our scope changed a lot. And we do understand it was about the military logistics, evacuation, the prevention of the consequences of the trade blockade, so the grain initiative, it's a solidarity lanes, and of course, critical restoration. So those numbers, frankly speaking, surprised our partners that we actually were building and restoring facilities even last year. And that's something which was necessary to say that even now, Ukraine survived and our economic, even in such difficult conditions, is living. That's the focus for the restoration, which embedded in the RDNA. It's very important, 5 priorities, but as well, like what I was trying to say in the beginning, we're going deeper on the level of the objects. Here, it's all understandable what we are focusing on and what our goals are. Restart of the Ukrainian economy, prevention of humanitarian crises, and bringing Ukrainians back. Here, we were trying to analyze the object by object approach. We checked the data, what we had before the full-scale invasion. We analyzed the amount of the things which were destroyed, analyzed the things which were renewed last year. And that's something which is planned to be financed for Ukrainian budget. That's approximately what we already have in the projects together with the European Investment Bank, World Bank, URP, Energy Efficiency Fund, etc. And that's the gap. Of course, we can discuss about the gap and the actual fill, because when we're talking about the RDNA, it's bigger numbers. And at the same time, we're trying to be realistic and to, absorb whatever is available. So here it's just understanding of the projects, and it's again like just quite a simple idea that at that moment it's majority loans, and the loans are good. We're happy that we're receiving loans, but it as well has its limits. Here are the few things regarding the prioritizations, which I was mentioning in the beginning. And I need to tell that we're now finalizing the document which will be submitted by the Cabinet of Ministers. I know that some partners were worrying like, why World Bank? But World Bank here was just a technical assistance helping us to structure our ideas how to prioritize restoration. Here it's a bit the way we're building the data-driven policies, the way we're trying to integrate that's all in one transparent thing. And we do understand that there are a lot of the challenges, but frankly speaking, the Ukrainian realities since the Euromaidan were all about the transformation from the digital point of view, because it became the most successful way to prevent the corruption. Here it's a bit more about the Dream.gov.ua. You also can visit it. I can tell you that now there are more than 6,000 projects, and we do want to make them more qualitative. We will embed also the possibility to analyze it through who is the donor, what is the sources, but already there are quite nice portfolio from the communities, which I'm quite proud of. Also, like here, we were trying to put on a table the idea that what are the black swans of this war? And here are the things where Ukraine actually answered by its own resources, because it was the most urgent. And any of the existing IFIs or financial tools weren't able to respond in the same way as Ukraine as a state can do. So that's for sure trade blockades, the attacks on the civilian infrastructure, Kakhovka dam disruption. Now we're working together with different experts to idea how to actually build a vehicle to manage those processes like before, not like it's already happened and now we're launching the procedures, but actually to have some framing, performance-based contracts, something which could work ahead. Here it was also a very important slide from our side, how to speed up the recovery. And we do understand that we need to work with a better business environment. For sure, that's about the just and compatible market conditions. It's about the fight against the corruption, courts, etc. But also there are some expectations from the partners regarding the financial support of the insurances, financial support of even their own countries' businesses to work in Ukraine. We do have already some examples. Let's say Germany is providing the German businesses working in Ukraine the guarantees to work here. In the same time, we had a quite nice discussion yesterday with the Denmark representatives who are now providing the export financing here in Ukraine, but with a partial grant money and also with a very cheap loan money, which we also addressed to the businesses and the public spheres as well. We also were thinking about the ability to manage it somehow with the emergency needs frame contracts, emergency funds, something, and it's up to discuss with the partners, but that's something which we're all looking for. Also, I'll share the data about the PPPs we were presenting, and here it's only possible now to implement it when you have such a strong partners like IFC who can provide the more believe on this project. At the same time, there is a piece of the knowledge which many people do not know, that Ukrainian communities, the municipalities, cities, starting the last year already have capability to attract the loans by themselves. After the financial decentralization, even the first 2 stages, they have this ability, and now they have this opportunity to attract finances and loans. And that's very important. And that was the message we were doing at each level, saying like, go on the region, go to the locals and build the projects right there. That's not necessary, go only and work only with the central government. So, and that's also was the idea that we build we launched the communication brand, which calls We Build Ukraine, because we don't understand that we would like to have the partners co-owners of the restoration. We understand that's impossible to do by ourselves, and we want to show that's only like a brick by brick approach can work. And we do understand that now it's the opportunity for all us to be united under this idea as well. So, and then last, probably like a thought regarding the donor coordination platform for our team. It's very important tool, and we do believe it's gonna work properly, and it's already achieved first results. But now we're gonna also focus on daily work on the expert level to make sure that we're planning well, to make sure that we are coordinating not only needs but also pragmatic interests of each country as well. And in the same time, we do understand that we're going to rely a lot on the platform to push reforms, because for many sectors, it's impossible to attract finances to transform the country without the reforms. It's actually, especially quite vividly in the energy sector, one of the most corrupted historically, but also one which we are already pushing a lot for them. Reforms. The remit was submitted by Ukrainian parliament, and now we are discussing together with the Minister of Energy and other partners how actually to invite private businesses here, because the energy system were heavily attacked by Russians, and we do understand such things like a decentralized energy distribution, energy generation is now not only about the capabilities in the local level, because that's something we would like to create on the municipal level, but that's about the national security, to make too expensive for Russians to attack on our energy resources, to build the microgrids. And that's something we do understand. If we'll have the proper market rules, the players will come with the technologies, with ideas by themselves. So I'm sorry if I was like trying to put a lot on the table, that I'm ready to go for the details and questions to explain. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Oleksandra. Really, it's very impressive presentation, what you are doing, what are the challenges. Now we shall move to EU side, let's say so. Gabriel Blanc, team leader from Reconstruction of Ukraine from Commission. Gabriel, please, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. KUBILIUS, and thank you for the invitation to the event. First, I would like to congratulate Oleksandra for the very good presentation that she delivered as well in London, and for her drive all along the way, also to put the municipalities at the core of the reconstruction, which we are very much keen to support. Also, thank you for engaging with the Commission, with us, and that we are in a constant contact. And this is something that which is very, very positive, we believe. I will say a few words about the main takeaways from London, and take the opportunity of your kind invitation to this meeting to say a few words about the Ukraine facility that the Commission has proposed last week. And to share with you what we have in mind. So first thing that I wanted to say is that if we compare to the last very, let's say, major event in relation with gathering international partners of Ukraine that took place in Paris in December, we have been partners of Ukraine, and the European Union at the first place have shown how supportive we are to help Ukraine to reply to its emergency needs. And that was about emergency, but as Oleksandra mentioned, about ensuring that in this difficult period of constant attack by Russia on the energy system, that Ukraine had access to energy equipment, to generators, and so on, and so forth. This was also, and this is still for this year, about supporting the state budget and the macro financial assistance that the EU provides is essential in this respect. All in all, you know, the headline figure that the EU and its member states have been providing above 70 billion euro of support to Ukraine. Now turning to London, what I believe is important is that the signal that the international community gave is that the partners of Ukraine are not only here to support Ukraine in emergency needs, but in the longer term. And this is this midterm vision, which also matters for the Ukrainian government, but also first and foremost for the population, to give a perspective that the partners of Ukraine are here to continue to support the country. This is also the strong message that was passed by the government, but also by the businesses, that reconstruction has already started and projects are being implemented by the government, that private companies are continuing to do business, to invest into reestablishing their facilities. And this is the moment now that we have to start focusing on reconstruction in this moment where Ukraine needs its partners the most. So turning to what the Commission has been announcing in London, it goes really in this direction. First, I wanted to say a few words about the agreements that were signed in London. That's mainly about agreements together with international financing institutions, where we are providing de-risking mechanism to crowd in investments. I give you a few examples. We signed an agreement with the IFC in order to de-risk loans to the private sector, notably women-led companies and in the agribusiness. We have as well signed an agreement with the EIB to provide guarantee capacity through local banks in Ukraine. So all this is about recovering the economy, about investments, and about indeed sustaining and creating new jobs. And all in all, it amounted for 800 million euro that were showcased at the occasion of the conference in London. And the other major announcement that the President of the Commission made public after the proposal was announced last Tuesday in London, this is about the Ukraine facility. And I'd like to, I mean, I don't know if it's possible, I'd like to share my screen just to show a couple of slides to illustrate my my speech. So can you see my screen?
Yes, now we see.
Okay,
now we see, it's okay.
Very good. So indeed, I will not, I mean, you all know the context in Ukraine, so I will not spend long in describing the situation. The notion of, which we believe is important, is that there is no time to lose, and that's what I said, that it starts now, and that indeed the partners of Ukraine are here to help Ukraine to win the war, but also to win the peace. And that's how the Commission would like to position its proposal. Indeed, this is about the proposal of this Ukraine facility has objectives in relation to address the most the needs of Ukraine today, but also in the medium term. So this is about continuing support to the state. This is about supporting the recovery and reconstruction of the country, about the modernization of the country, and also about supporting reforms that Ukraine needs to undertake on its EU accession path. We believe it is important to strike a right balance between the flexibility, because obviously the situation remains very volatile, and we need to make sure that this facility can adapt to a fast evolving context, but also to give predictability on how the EU wants to continue support Ukraine in the medium run. We have tabled this proposal to cover the period 2024-2027, which is actually until the end of the current multi-annual financial framework of the Union. So I said already a few words about the objective of the facility. Just to repeat them, and this is that we want to continue to support the Ukrainian state to make sure that it can continue to operate and deliver essential services. That this facility should otherwise mobilize investments, notably to crowd in private investments, but also continue supporting broadly the Ukrainian society, would it be through our support to civil society organizations, but also to address the social consequences of the war. In light of this, we have structured our proposal around 3 pillars. The first pillar, this is about the support that will go directly to the state. So the support will be provided on the basis of a plan that the Ukrainian government will have to prepare. We don't see this plan as the plan for the Commission only. That's the plan that the government will prepare for itself, for the reforms that it wants to undertake, proposing a sequencing of reforms. We know that the accession process is very demanding, so this is important for the government of Ukraine to reflect on the sequencing of these reforms, and also about investments in the reconstruction that the state wants to undertake. And so based on this plan, we will identify milestones, and the Commission will pay regularly as long as the plan that the government of Ukraine will prepare will be implemented. So this is the first pillar of the facility. The second pillar, this is what we call the Ukraine Investment Framework. This is in partnership with IFIs. The Ukraine Investment Framework is about bringing financial instruments that will allow de-risking of investments in Ukraine. Would it be public or private, but with the aim of progressively crowding in mostly private investors to the reconstruction. And the third pillar, which is, let's say, more traditional, which is about mobilization of technical assistance to support the government, capacity building to the local authorities, but also to the state institutions. And also we intend to cover the interest rate subsidies through this pillar. A word about the amounts that we are proposing. So we think the amount of 50 billion is a good amount that will allow the EU to continue its major support to Ukraine. This in our proposal, we propose to have a split between grants and loans with 1/3 of grant and 2/3 of loan out of this 50 billion. And a distribution by pillar. As you see, the first pillar, we consider that will be the most important one in terms of amount, that's 39 billion euros. The second pillar, this is about 8 billion euros of grant. And because we are speaking about investment and de-risking mechanism, our calculation makes that with this 8 billion euros, we should be able to mobilize 17.8 billion euros of investment. And the third pillar, about 3 billion euros that will be devoted, as I mentioned, to technical assistance and other form of supports. I propose that I will stop here my presentation. I think I have already, alors comment je fais déjà? Stop sharing, where's that? I don't see it, yes. Yes, thank you. So happy to take questions on this proposal. I'd like to conclude by telling that this is the proposal of the Commission. You know how it works, and that obviously this will be negotiated with the EU member states and with the Parliament, and so that may be obviously different depending on the outcome of the negotiations. In terms of timeline, we would like that these negotiations are completed obviously as soon as possible. We hope that this can be done by the end of this year, and that in parallel we will work with the Ukrainian government based on the government's proposal for the plan to discuss about it. Voilà, I will end up here and hand it over to you, Mr. KUBILIUS. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Gabriel. And now we're moving to Hugo Mingarelli, as I said before.
Thank you, Mr. KUBILIUS. Oleksandra and Gabriel made obviously very interesting presentation, and I will focus my 6 minutes on 3 points. we could discuss, obviously, 200 points, but we have to focus. First point, we have witnessed over the last months a proliferation of proposals, interesting proposals, coming from our Ukrainian friends and the donors community. But as we all know or should know, any country in a post-conflict situation has a limited absorption capacity. And therefore, you are absolutely right, Oleksandra, when you say that it is imperative to set priorities. Trying to embrace all Ukrainian needs at the same time and from the start would be a recipe for disaster. And therefore, you are right, you have to set priorities, geographic priorities and sectoral priorities. Who will have to be involved on the Ukrainian side? You said, Oleksandra, that you should involve fully the local authorities, and you are right. The mayors, the government of the oblast, and the Romada. But you should not forget, please, the civil society. You know better than me that you have an outstanding civil society. At each stage of the project cycle, please try to involve the civil society. They will enrich the shape of your recovery process. And in my view, you should involve the local authorities and the civil society organization at three main steps when it comes to infrastructure project, for instance, because this is your area of responsibility. First of all, you have to select the priority sectors because you cannot cover all sectors from day one. Even if you have needs in all sectors, you have to select for the first year a limited number of sectors. When you have selected the priority sectors, within each sectors, you have to select a number of projects. And there you should have as well local authorities and civil society. And then please involve the local authorities and the civil society in drafting the terms of reference of each project. Before you launch a tender, you have to draft the terms of reference for each project. And if you want to make sure that your project meets the needs of the poor people who have been under 9 years of Russian shelling, please involve the local people, civil society, mayors, and oblast governors, okay? This is the first point on priorities, and if you want, I can develop on this. Second point, Gabriel reminded once again, and he's right, that the whole recovery process will have three main components. The reconstruction of damaged/destroyed infrastructure and production facilities, the resumption and acceleration of the reform process, modernization, as he said, and third point, the EU accession process. There will be no spontaneous coordination between these three paths. And there is a need for the Ukrainians and obviously for the EU colleagues to, at each step, ensure a close coordination of what will happen in the three components. I'll give you one example that you can multiply to all sectors. In the energy sector, today, we know already that the Americans want to be involved. In London, they have spoken about clear projects to overhaul the energy sector. The IFC wants to be involved. The EBRD wants to be involved. The EIB is already involved. And the EU has been involved since 2015 because, as you know, Ukraine is a member of the Energy Community Treaty. If you want to make sure that what the American, the IFC, blah, 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 will do is in line with the EU core body of laws and legislation that you will have to take over in the EU accession process, you have to put in place a coordination mechanism, which means that you have to put in place a TA team in the energy ministry and probably as well in Olga Stefanichina team to ensure that when the Americans do something in the energy sector, it will be in line with what we have been doing under the Energy Community Treaty for years, and it will be in line with the EU accession negotiation, which I hope will start at the beginning of next year. And I have 2 minutes just for an additional comment. The Ukrainians will not have to rebuild only their houses and their roads. Millions of them will have to rebuild their lives. And I am talking about the millions of people who have been under Russian shelling from Kharkiv up to Mariupol, not for 18 months, but for 9 years. You have, as you know better than me, Oleksandra, millions of people who are traumatized. Something has to be done from the start for these people. And therefore, don't forget to have, as a main component of your recovery process, provision of mental health services. First point. Second point, you know as well, I know that Ukrainians don't like when I speak about that you will have to ensure that people who have been fighting against Russians, people who have been living under Russian occupation for 9 years or 1 year, and people who have been collaborating with Russian, all these people will have to live together. Think about the necessity to put in place a strong team to ensure the reconciliation of this fractured Ukrainian society. And then, and I stop there, please don't forget the environment. The environment support is not spectacular, and therefore many donors and even the Ukrainian will have a tendency to forget a bit about that. But as you know, the Russians have been conducting a scorched earth strategy since 2014 in your country. And you have a large part of the Ukrainian territory where Ukrainians will no longer be able to survive if you don't do something quickly. This is the case, obviously, of the mines and the non-exploded ordnances, but it is the case as well on all areas where you have flooded coal mines and iron mines, all the area around Lugansk, Donetsk, Kryvyi Rih, where the underground water has been contaminated for years now because the war in the gallery mines have not been pumped. If you don't do something quickly in all these areas, people will not be able to survive in these areas. So environment will be absolutely of the essence from the start if you want to avoid a large part of the territory of your country, which will be totally impossible for any people to live in. I stop here. I have already been too long.
Okay, thanks a lot, Ambassador. So I know that, Oleksandra, you should tell us that you need to leave quite soon, or that's...
I will. We actually have now the conference dedicated to good governance in the restoration. We had quite a good survey presented by the experts regarding how the communities and the people see the restoration, quite shocking things. And like, for example, the Kharkiv consider itself as the most secure city in Ukraine, while the Uzhhorod feels less secure. So, you know, those things are actually in the core now of the existence and the trauma actually we're all facing now. Just very short reflection regarding what Ambassador, His Excellency underlined. Our team were quite privileged to be at the meeting with the G7 ministers of transport in Japan just before the London, and it was a very important meeting. And I do think the Japan experience is unique for Ukraine because there's a country which constantly rebuilding itself. And frankly speaking, their portfolio for the ministry and for the restoration, actually exactly what we have, very connected to the regional policies, very connected to the overall planning. And the thing which surprised the whole team, they're starting from the psychological aid and therapy for the population. They're saying that the people are our core resources, that we're trying to help people first. And actually the way to help people, it's actually to provide them access to their normal jobs and work. And even on the images of the restoration they're building after the Fukushima was all about, first of all, like you can provide people temporary houses, but first they need to have places to work, to continue their activities. And it's not only about the economic development, but the, people to stay people, and then everything else. So it's very quite, like probably that's not like 100% the experience applicable to Ukraine, but for sure the overall approach is around the same thing. So I'm with you here. And I also, regarding the prioritization, as I mentioned, we started to work with the Gabriel Blanc also team. We're now like in exchange of the letters with all those, and we do understand that we're going to have more of that. It's very like process where the details matters, and we're ready to do this job. And of course we do understand that it's a huge work to make it all aligned, but I think we're in a good way, because at least we're gathering the data, we're building the procedures, and we all understand in which frame we're doing that. And that's all about the Euro integration.
Okay, so but you can stay with us now, or for tell us.
Just a second. So I was informed like a few minutes.
2 minutes.
3 minutes, yeah.
Yeah. So
sorry.
Then we need to conclude. So thanks a lot, Oleksandra. Thanks a lot to everybody. Maybe I have one question to Gabriel. Commission is speaking about 50 billion facility till 2027, end of 2027. 4 years, it means per year 12.5. Now, Commission is providing 18 billion for this year. So does it mean that we are diminishing, or it's different calculation?
Thank you very much for this question. So we have based our calculation on two main sources. One is the IMF report that came together with the program, and the rapid damage needs assessment that has been prepared by the World Bank and also involving the Commission. So the IMF report provides an idea about you have a baseline scenario of the budgetary trajectory of Ukraine, and we have calculated that we will continue to contribute to the same magnitude in terms of percentage to help Ukraine to close its financing gap for the state. So that is what is coming from the pillar 1 of the facility that I have presented. And then indeed we have the figures coming from the RDNA that are informing about the reconstruction needs in general, irrespective whether it's coming from the state or not. And so we believe that with our pillar 2, and we have now, maybe it's a bit technical, but we have a high provisioning rate for guarantees that is due to the situation in Ukraine. But if we follow the baseline scenario of the IMF, we hope that this provisioning rate will decrease and we can mobilize our guarantee to cover more investments. So to reply to your question, we think, and that's based on this IMF scenario, that we will continue to contribute to the same level in terms of percentage, but that indeed what we hope is that and that's the scenario on which we are working on, that progressively the economy of Ukraine will recover, that the financing gap will not be as big as it is today, and so we can redirect our fund to contribute to investment for the reconstruction and the modernization of the country. And just to mention that the split that you made per year, we think that it should not be the how to say that we should front load part of this money, because the financing gap next year would be huge. And so this is not about splitting with the same amount annually, but matching the needs of the state budget. Thank you.
Okay, good. So thanks a lot to everybody. Oleksandra, Hugo, Gabriel, thanks a lot. Really, it was very informative. I think that, yeah, we shall regularly perhaps will come back with our webinars, asking what is happening, how things are going on. So thanks a lot. Sorry for those who were raising hands to ask the questions next time. We shall have more time. Okay,
Thank
good.
you.
So,
goodbye.
Thank
you very much.